What if a single muttered comment, just 4 words under your breath, could destroy your life in minutes? That's exactly what happened to Clara Dorsey on a Tuesday afternoon in Minneapolis. She wasn't trying to be rude. She wasn't trying to start a fight. She was just exhausted, frustrated, and at the absolute end of her rope. But what happened next would spiral so far out of control that she'd spend the night in a holding cell, accused of threatening a family she'd bent over backwards to help. And here's the crazy part. The entire thing was caught on camera. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how a moment of quiet frustration turned into a legal nightmare, and how one piece of evidence changed everything. But more importantly, you'll see why kindness matters, why the system failed, and how one person's voice became powerful enough to shake an entire nation. If stories about injustice and redemption hit you hard, you need to stick around for this one. Let's dive in. It was 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Clara Dorsey was running on fumes. She'd arrived at the diner that morning at 6 a.m. for the breakfast rush. 12 hours later, she was still there, her feet aching in ways she didn't know were possible, her back screaming with every step, her smile somehow still intact. Double shifts were brutal. They paid the bills, but they also drained something deeper from you, that invisible thing that reminds you, at the end of the day, why you're fighting. Clara was 26, smart, ambitious, and trapped in a cycle she never planned for. Her mom had gotten sick 3 years ago, and medical bills had a way of derailing dreams. College fund? Gone. Savings? Wiped. So here she was, working doubles at Murphy's Diner, a place that had become her second home, and her daily reminder of how uncertain life could be. But here's what mattered about Clara. She didn't let it show. When customers sat down at her section, they got her full attention. She remembered orders without writing them down. She refilled coffee before your cup got half empty. She asked about your day like she genuinely cared, and she did. That was Clara's superpower. In a world where service workers were invisible, she refused to disappear. The other servers noticed. The manager noticed. Her regulars came back specifically for her section. That Tuesday, she'd served maybe 60 customers across 2 shifts. And in all those hours, she'd given them what she always gave them. Genuine care wrapped in genuine service. Her feet were throbbing. Her voice was hoarse from talking. And she had exactly 45 minutes left before her shift ended. She had no idea those 45 minutes would change her life forever. Around 4:15 p.m., a couple walked in. They weren't local. Clara could tell that immediately. They had the bearing of people accustomed to nice things. Tailored clothes, expensive watches, the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you belong everywhere. They took a booth in Clara's section, and she approached with her standard warmth. "Hi there. Welcome in. How are you two doing today?" They ordered efficiently, barely making eye contact. Polite but distant. Clara didn't take it personally. She'd learned long ago that not everyone was in a chatty mood. Some people came to diners to escape, not connect. But as the meal progressed, something shifted. When Clara brought their food, the husband found an issue. The eggs weren't cooked quite how he wanted them. Not a huge problem. He explained it clearly, and Clara apologized genuinely. She offered to send them back immediately, but his tone had changed. There was an edge now, a sharpness that suggested he was used to being disappointed by service. His wife checked her phone constantly, barely acknowledging Clara's presence. When Clara asked if everything was okay, the wife gave a thin smile and said, "Fine," without looking up. These weren't unusual customers. They were just dismissive. The kind of people who viewed service workers as part of the furniture, necessary, but not quite real, not quite worthy of basic human acknowledgement. Clara replaced the eggs. She refilled their coffee without asking. She kept her energy positive, professional, unflinching. This was her job. This was what she did. But inside, something was building. A small frustration. A quiet ache of invisibility. She still had no idea it was about to explode. The couple's young child was with them, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He was quiet, well-behaved, but Clara noticed something. He barely smiled. The entire meal, he looked almost as disconnected as his parents. So Clara did what Clara always did. When they ordered dessert, she told the parents she'd add something extra for the kid, a small sundae, on the house. The parents didn't protest. They just nodded, as if this was expected service, not genuine kindness. But the child's face lit up. For a moment, Clara saw actual joy. That moment made the entire shift worth it. She refilled their coffee 3 more times. She boxed up their leftovers with extra care, wrapping the containers like they mattered. She asked if there was anything else they needed. Professional, attentive, going above and beyond the baseline of what a server is supposed to do. And with each gesture, Clara waited for something. Just a simple acknowledgement. A thank you. A you've been great. Something human. It never came. By the time they finished eating, Clara had invested genuine emotional labor into making their experience special. Not because she expected anything in return. She'd learned not to expect tips or gratitude, but because that's who she was. She treated every table like they mattered, every customer like they deserved her best. And every single time, there was a small part of her that hoped they'd see her. When they stood up to leave, the husband pulled out his wallet. He left cash on the table, without counting it, without making eye contact. His wife was already walking toward the door, their son trailing behind them, his small face returning to that blank, disconnected expression. Clara watched them go. No thank you, no acknowledgement, not even a glance back. She'd given them everything she had left that day, and she'd been treated like she was invisible. That's when the frustration broke through. They were halfway to the door when Clara spoke. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was barely a whisper, the kind of thing you say when you think no one's listening. When your filter is finally given out after 12 hours of smiling at people who didn't smile back. A simple thank you would have been nice. That was it. 4 words. Quiet. Almost to herself. The husband stopped mid-step. He turned around slowly, and when he did, his face had transformed. It wasn't just anger. It was the kind of righteous indignation that comes from someone accustomed to always being right. His eyes narrowed, and he started walking back toward Clara, his wife following behind him with a confused expression. "Excuse me?" His voice cut through the diner like a knife. "Did you just speak to us?" Clara's chest tightened. She immediately recognized the mistake. She could feel the temperature in the room shift, could sense the other customers start to turn their heads. "I'm sorry Clara started, her exhaustion suddenly morphing into anxiety. "That was incredibly unprofessional," the husband interrupted. "We paid you good money, and you have the audacity to criticize us? We were threatened. She threatened us." The word hung in the air like poison. Threatened? Clara's mind scrambled. She hadn't threatened anyone. She'd made a quiet comment. But it didn't matter what had actually happened. It mattered what he was claiming had happened. And his wife was nodding along, reinforcing the narrative. The diner went quiet. Everyone was watching now. Within seconds, Clara heard someone say, "I'm calling the police." 15 minutes later, 2 police officers walked to the diner door. Clara's hands were shaking. She tried to explain to the couple what had actually happened, but her voice kept cracking. Her words kept stumbling over themselves. Panic has a way of making you look guilty even when you're innocent. Her hands trembled. Her voice rose. She was trying to defend herself, to explain the context, to make them understand. But the more she spoke, the worse she looked. The officers approached with neutral expressions, but they'd already heard the couple's version of events. They'd heard the word threat. They'd heard accusations of unprofessional behavior. That was the frame now, and everything Clara said had to fit into it or be filtered out. "Miss, we're going to need you to come with us," one of the officers said. "But I didn't do anything," Clara said, her voice shaking. I was tired, and I made a comment, and their lie about me threatening them. That's not what happened." But her body language told a different story to people who didn't know her. She looked agitated, defensive, emotional, to officers responding to a complaint they had no context for. She looked like someone who might be dangerous. The diner manager tried to intervene. "Officer, this is ridiculous. Clara would never." "Sir, please step back," the officer replied. Within minutes, Clara was being led out of the diner in handcuffs. The couple watched from their car in the parking lot. Other customers filmed on their phones. And Clara, exhausted, shocked, barely understanding what was happening, disappeared into the back of a police car. She kept saying, "This is a mistake. Please, there's security footage. Check the cameras. This is a mistake." But by then, no one was listening. At the station, she was booked on charges related to making threats. Her mugshot was taken. Her personal information was recorded. And despite her insistence on her innocence, despite her pleas to check the footage, she was placed in a holding cell. The couple had already posted their side of the story online. The holding cell was cold, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Concrete walls, metal bench, a single toilet in the corner. Clara sat there, still in her diner uniform, and tried to process what had just happened. 3 hours ago, she was serving coffee and making sundaes for a stranger's child. Now she was accused of making threats. Her name was already circulating online. She could picture it. Screenshots of the couple's posts, comment from strangers calling her unprofessional, threatening, dangerous. People she'd never met making judgments about her character based on a lie. Her phone had been taken as evidence, but she'd managed to catch glimpses of the couple's posts before the officers arrived. They were painting themselves as victims, her as the villain, and the internet was running with it. Clara kept replaying the moment in her head, the comment she'd made, the look on his face, the spiral that followed. Each time she replayed it, the reality of her situation became more terrifying. What if no one believed her? What if the footage was somehow missing or inconclusive? What if she was actually arrested for something she didn't do? She sat in that cell for hours, cold and alone, watching her life unravel through the lens of a lie that she couldn't control or stop. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the helplessness. Early the next morning, Clara's phone call came through. It was a diner manager, and his voice had changed completely. "Clara, don't worry. We have the footage. We have everything." Those words felt like oxygen after drowning. The diner security cameras had captured the entire interaction. Clara's comment, quiet, barely audible, spoken under her breath. The couple's dismissal of her. The lack of any threat, any aggression, any unprofessional behavior on her part. Just a tired young woman who'd made a quiet comment after being treated like she was invisible. Within hours, the manager had shared the footage with the police department and with the media. Within hours after that, the narrative flipped. The video went viral not as a story about a threatening waitress, but as a story about an injustice. Comments flooded in from service industry workers, sharing their own stories of mistreatment. From people who'd felt invisible. From anyone who'd ever been accused of something they didn't do and had nowhere to turn. News outlets picked up the story. Woman wrongly accused of making threats. Security footage clears her name. The couple's identities were revealed. Their social media accounts flooded with backlash. Their businesses, turns out they own a small marketing firm, started losing clients. By afternoon, Clara's charges were dropped. She was released without apology, without explanation, just a brief statement that there had been a misunderstanding. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an accusation. A lie, an attempt to weaponize the system against someone who'd done nothing wrong. And one piece of truth had made all the difference. The story didn't end when Clara was released. If anything, that's when it really began. Her video, the security footage combined with news coverage, became a rallying cry for the service industry. Thousands of workers came forward with their own stories. Tales of mistreatment, disrespect, and the constant invisibility that comes with serving others. Clara's story had given voice to an entire community that had been silenced for too long. Media outlets started investigating similar cases. How many people had been wrongly accused? How many service workers had faced legal consequences based on false claims? The conversation expanded beyond Clara to systemic issues. Do restaurants need body cameras? Should there be training for how police respond to these calls? How do we protect workers from false accusations? Policy discussions began. Some jurisdictions started implementing new protocols. And Clara, The same young woman who'd been in a holding cell just days before was suddenly being asked to speak at conferences, to appear on podcasts, to share her experience with anyone who would listen. She received job offers from major hospitality companies. Donation campaigns started to help pay for legal fees. Most importantly, she received messages from thousands of people saying her story had changed how they viewed service workers, how they treated people in the hospitality industry, how they understood the fragility of justice. One quiet moment of frustration had become a moment of reckoning for an entire system. 3 months after that Tuesday afternoon, Clara sat down for an interview and finally told her story fully. "I want people to understand something," she said, her voice steady but still carrying the weight of what she'd been through. "Service workers are people. We're not robots. We're not invisible. When you treat us with disrespect, it matters. But more than that, I want people to understand how easily the system can fail you. I was accused of something I didn't do. I spent a night in a cell. My name was dragged through the internet. And it all could have ended very differently if that footage didn't exist." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But here's what I also learned. Truth matters. Community matters. And when enough people stand up and say, 'This is wrong,' things change. So I'm asking you, all of you watching, to treat service workers with the respect we deserve. Tip well. Say thank you. Smile. These things matter more than you know. And if you ever see injustice, speak up, because silence makes you complicit." Clara's story became a blueprint for change. It showed that one person's voice, amplified by truth, could shake an entire system. It demonstrated that kindness costs nothing, but injustice costs everything. And it reminded the world that the people serving you are worthy of your humanity. If this story resonated with you, please like this video. Comment with your own experiences. Have you felt invisible? Have you stood up for someone? Have you been wrongly accused? I want to hear from you. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Clara's story. And subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people fighting for justice, for dignity, for their voice to be heard. Because these stories matter. And so do you.